Hey folks, this is the Patriot, Del Wilkes, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio, right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com and YouTube. It is your friend James Walsh here. Patrick Kelly, our other friend, will be joining us in just a few moments as we welcome the one and only Del Wilkes, and as we found out, the one and only Patriot as well. So if you are tuning in to hear Del Wilkes, just bear with me just one moment. Just want to do a little bit of house cleaning, as they call it these days. We're going to have on our next show TNA World Heavyweight Champion Drew Galloway. TNA Impact Wrestling has become very, very good to us, and we in turn are very, very good to them. We're very happy with how successful their Pop TV show has become. They're getting some of the best numbers since the move to Pop TV. We're starting to get above those Destination America numbers and heading towards those Spike numbers, and that's where we all want to see them go, up and up and up, because, hey, competition is the best way. And even if it's not competition, having an alternative is the best way to grow the business. Speaking of alternatives, this guy, the Patriot, who I told in a Facebook message, and I meant it, and here it is for proof, has been on my wall for 18 years now, maybe 17, 18 years, and it's because I'm such a big fan of his. Honestly, I grew up a Global Wrestling Federation fan. I did watch the AWA, but I was not a huge fan of the AWA because, number one, I was a little young for it, and number two, it wasn't at its best in those later days. I did see it when they aired it on ESPN Classic in later years, but, you know, I think everybody knows that it wasn't where it was in 85 when it was humming, or even 83 when they had Hogan and everybody else going on, and real big before they got rated. Anyway, hope everybody enjoys our interview with Del Wilkes. It is one of the more informative ones that I've heard him do. I've seen he's done a few in the past couple of years. We tried to steer away from just the usual questions and throw a couple of zingers and different ones in there. And the ending is, I think, the one that's going to make the headlines with the discussion about who owns the name The Patriot. So if you guys have ever wondered that, if you've heard the urban legends and folklore, we're putting it to bed today, this week on Interactive Wrestling Radio. Enjoy. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Be sure and check out WrestlingEpicenter.com. Check the newsline out. Check out our store. We'd love to have you come and buy something. And do check out Del Wilkes' new DVD at Del Wilkes' website. And we'll talk all about that in just a few moments. I'm done. Enjoy the interview, and thank you guys again for tuning in.
This is the Total Package, Lex Luger. You are on the Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Right now on the Newsmaker line with us is a guy that, I'll be honest, it's a true honor to have on. It's a guy that I was definitely a fan of growing up as a kid, running home from school to watch Global Wrestling every day after school, catching it on ESPN at 4 o'clock, and that is the star of the Global Wrestling Federation during its most important time period, and, of course, later on, greater fame with WCW and the WWF, the one and only Patriot, Del Wilkes. Mr. Wilkes, are you with us?
I am.
All right. Well, it's a true honor to have you on the show, and how are you doing tonight?
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'm doing great, man. Things are good here in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, I've heard. Definitely better than they were about a year ago, from what I remember.
Yeah.
The terrible tragedy that happened. That's awful. But
it sure was, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the reason we're having you on is we definitely wanted to talk about your new DVD release that you have out. It's I believe it's a 3-disc set, 7 hours of content, and it is all about you and your story. I guess my question for you is, what made you decide to finally put this together for all the Patriot fans?
Well, I had someone approach me about doing this that had an idea, a guy named Michael Elliott, who has done several documentaries on former wrestlers or retired wrestlers. He did one on Crockett Promotions. He did one on Ivan Koloff. He did one on the Rock and Roll Express. He did one on Harley Race. He also did one on Magnum TA, and does very good work. Very good work. And Michael's respected, highly respected, by people in the wrestling business. But he actually approached my wife first. He contacted her through Facebook, and then later that year, I was at an event in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, called Wrestlecade. They have every November, and a big event there. And I met Michael there, and we started talking about it, and started making plans to get this done. And actually, we started a Kickstarter campaign to help us raise some money to finish the project off. We were trying to raise $3,500. We raised $6,000, so that allowed us to do the third disc and include several more people on there. So, man, we're very excited about it, very pleased with it as well.
Absolutely. I have not, I'll be honest with you, I have not had a chance to check this out, but I got to take it based on, like you said, the previous works of the gentleman who did this. I have seen the Rock and Roll Express one, I've seen the Harley Race one, and the Crockett Promotions release as well. I know how they do it, and it's definitely on par with what the WWE does. It's really good stuff. So if you're listening to this and you will want to find out more, then certainly more than we can bring you in this short interview that we're doing with you, absolutely you can check it out. And I believe you said you can get an autographed copy through your website. Am I correct?
That's correct. You can go to Del the Patriot Wilkes.com, and you can get the DVD on the website there. As you said, it's 3 discs, 7 hours. Listen, man, it's got a lot of very famous wrestlers on there. Some guys I played football with at South Carolina, including the 1980 Heisman Trophy winner, George Rogers, who was my teammate in 1980, Greg Gagne, Stan Hansen, Bruce Pritchard, Marcus Bagwell, Jackie Fulton, Bobby Fulton, Bill Apter, a lot of great people that agreed to participate and be a part of this. And it's $20 plus shipping and handling, and it will get autographed as well.
That's awesome. Well, I hope everybody does check that out. And I definitely wanted to have you on to promote that availability. But we always like to ask some career highlight questions during our interviews. Are you okay with us asking some of those?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, going straight back, the first time I had a chance to see you was as the Trooper in the AWA. Now, it wasn't the best time for the AWA. I think everybody knows that they were not at their best. Their glory days were definitely behind them. But what was the experience like for you going from, somewhat nationally unknown to being nationally known on the AWA wrestling show on ESPN?
Well, you're correct. They were on life support. They had seen their better days. Their better days were far behind them. And they were a struggling company that was basically just doing TV. And that was it. But Wahoo McDaniel worked in the office with Vern and Greg Gagne, and Wahoo lived up there, but he had a permanent home in Charlotte, and he came down to Charlotte to work a show came to Columbia. He was staying in Charlotte for a couple of weeks and came to Columbia to work on a show that I was on. And I met Wahoo, and when he got back to Minneapolis, he told Vern and Greg about me, and then they contacted me. And it was great. It was, when you're a part of something like that, you realize, I did at the time, that the AWA is not what it once was. Even a young guy in the business like myself knew that. I grew up following wrestling and knew a lot about wrestling. And but still, it was an opportunity for me to be on nationwide TV 5 days a week. That ESPN spot that you mentioned earlier about Global, before Global had it, the AWA had it.
They absolutely did.
Actually, I think you mentioned it in accordance with the AWA. I'm sorry. But, yeah, we were on TV every Monday through Friday from 4 to 5 o'clock. And when you have an opportunity to get nationwide and worldwide TV coverage, because ESPN had started, going worldwide, it's a big deal, and it's a big thing, and it helped open up some other doors for me.
And you mentioned Global, and that was really where a lot of us wrestling fans saw you for the first time as the Patriot. What did you think of that persona when you first adopted it, and how were you allowed to take control of it and let it evolve and kind of turn it into your own thing?
Well, they approached me with the idea. As a matter of fact, when the AWA folded and closed its doors for good, a lot of us in the business that had heard that there were rumblings about this new company that was going to start up, the Global Wrestling Federation, and there was this very rich African businessman that was going to dump millions of dollars into it. Well,
that's become
happened.
like a comedy gold, by the way. Some people
yeah.
make a lot of jokes about that.
yeah. Well, it was a lack of gold too that hurt the GWF. But anyway, when they finally found financial backing and some money to get started, they contacted me about coming out to Dallas, where they were going to tape all their shows at the Sportatorium there, and working their very first TV taping ever. And all they said to me was, we're going to FedEx you a ticket and bring your gear. So I took my trooper gear with me, and I thought that's what I was going to do. And we all stayed at the same motel there in Dallas. And literally just a few hours before we were to leave to go to the building and tape the very first show, Joe Pedicino called me. And he said, hey, man, I need you to walk across the parking lot to my room. He said, Bonnie and I are here, and Bill Eady's in here with us. And Bill was also part of the brain trust here at Global. And so I got to the room. They let me in, and they presented this idea to me. Now, I take you back to 1990, 91, whenever it was. Patriotism was at a really high level because we had gone in to liberate Kuwait. Hussein had sent his military in to occupy Kuwait, and so George Herbert Walker Bush sent our military in to liberate Kuwait. And so when something like that happens, especially initially, patriotism is at a fever pitch. And they said, look, we think we've got a chance here to take advantage of the political climate right now. And they started pulling the gear out of a costume box that they brought with them. Red, white, and blue mask, red, white, and blue tights, red, white, and blue trunks. And they pulled out this smokestack Uncle Sam hat that was about 3 feet tall. And they said, we want to call it the Patriot, and we think you're the guy to pull it off. And I immediately responded. I said, I'm all in. I'll do it, but I'm not wearing that stupid smokestack hat. Take that out of the deal, I'm in. And that night, guys...
Hold on, what was the smokestack hat?
It was the, you know how Abe Lincoln...
I got you.
Uncle Sam.
Okay.
Yeah, the Uncle Sam smokestack hat, the Abe Lincoln. This thing was 3 feet tall, and it was red, white, and blue. And
wow.
I thought, I'll wear the mask. I'll wear the rest of it. I'm all in. I'm not wearing that stupid hat. Take that out of the equation, and you got a deal. Let's do it. And that night, when I walked down the aisle at the Sportatorium, that was the first time that crowd had ever seen that character, and the place went crazy. And it was obvious from that moment that we were on the right thing.
We talked to James Beard. I think he might have been in the room at the time. At least that's the way it made it sound when we spoke to him about it. And he said, they didn't know how it was going to work out, but that you took it and really made it your own and really did great things with it. Did you think at the time when you first did that character that it would become essentially your persona for the remainder of your wrestling career?
Well, I didn't know for sure. I thought we had a chance of it being something special. And that was me. That is me. I am a very patriotic guy. I am deeply in love with this country, guys. I mean, I know it's not perfect. It's flawed, but it's the best we've ever seen. And it's the best in the history of mankind. And I am a true patriotic individual. I love this country. I love our military. I love what we are. And so it was an easy deal for me. It really was. It was just an extension of my personality. So I was very comfortable in doing that. I was very comfortable with promos because, again, these were thoughts I'd had all my life about patriotism and things like that. So, yeah, it was very, very, very easy fit for me.
And one of the things that I loved about the GWF having the Patriot as their number one good guy, and we'll talk in a minute about how brief it was, because it feels, because of how long those tapes aired, like it was a lot longer than it probably really was for you as a performer, but on TV it seemed like a long time. But one of the cool things was that you were the major good guy, the major babyface of the GWF, and from a kid who was at the lunch table at school, GWF was put up there with the WCW and with the WWF at the time, and we talked about it. It was what we liked, and WWF had Hulk Hogan as the All-American good guy. Sting in WCW was the All-American good guy, even wore the red, white, and blue a lot of times himself, and you being the Patriot obviously did as well. Do you think that in the modern climate, with everything that we're facing right now, a character like that, a red, white, and blue babyface character in modern wrestling could still get over?
I do. I really do. I think there's always been a place for that in wrestling. And I know the fans now are greatly more educated than they were back then. You know, they're a little harder edge to them. They want, you know, they like the envelope being pushed, and I get that, but I still think there's always, and maybe it doesn't have to be as much white meat baby face as I was, but I still think there's room there for a character like that, a patriotic character. And, you know, listen, there's, with the election coming up right now and, you know, the political climate like it is and the way things are right now, I certainly think it would work.
Speaking of working, Global had that you know, Monday through Friday time slot every day at 4 o'clock, and I really thought that was awesome. I remember vaguely, because I'll be honest with you, I'm 34, so I was still about 10 years old when Global came out. So I was a little younger when AWA was on, but I did watch it because I've been watching wrestling since I was a little more than a toddler. But for me, you know, Global is my most memory watching it Monday through Friday. Do you think that would still work? A format where you have a daily wrestling show with the attention span of people today with, you know, cell phones being so short, I think that would be just incredible. I think people would really flock to that.
I do. I think it would work, absolutely. And to your point, I tell you, over the years, man, I have talked to literally probably thousands of people that said exactly what you just said. I was a kid. I was in school. I was, you know, in my early teens. I was 10, 11 years old, and I could not wait to get home, get my homework done, where I could sit on the couch and watch the GWF Monday through Friday. And that was a big deal for a lot of, you know, kids that were your age at that time and teenagers to be able to do that. And it was very short-lived. Listen, it was a great idea. It was a great concept. And it mixed a lot of young, up-and-coming talent with some very established names, guys that were more seasoned, maybe even on the downside of their career. But even though it was short-lived, the GWF had an impact on wrestling because, you know, out of that group come Sean Waltman, the Lightning Kid, the 1-2-3 Kid, X-Pac. There come Marcus Bagwell, who was the handsome stranger in the GWF. There come the Patriot, you know, Jerry Lynn, some other great talent come out of there.
Chris Wright, the WWE Hall of Famer now, Godfather, came from
there too. Absolutely. That's exactly right. Yep, he came from there too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of great guys that came from there.
Well, we talked about, speaking of guys that came from there, we talked about great All-American baby faces, but one of the most memorable feuds that you had during your time there was with the Dark Patriot, who was kind of the evil version of you. What are your memories of that angle, and do you wish it had more of a payoff?
Well, yeah, I wish it did. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good thing. I thought it was smart booking. I think, if I'm not mistaken, now that was a long time ago. I've had a lot of blows to the head since then and done a lot of crazy things, so memory sometimes is not my best or my strongest point. But I know it was Doug Gilbert that did that character, and I'm thinking it was Eddie's idea, Eddie Gilbert.
Eddie, I think, had taken over the book, if I'm not mistaken, and I know that Bruce Pritchard had come down from being Brother Love and was also assisting in some ways. I don't know to what extent, but was also there as well.
Yep, you are correct. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you another thing too that didn't allow it to go on any longer is I had a chance to go to All Japan. I had gone to All Japan and worked for Mr. Baba in either 89 or 90, and I went as a trooper, and I was not really prepared for what I was going to experience there, that style of work, that stiff style of work, those long finishes, the many fault finishes that they had, and I did horrible, and I was convinced I would never go back. Oh. Now, you fast forward a year and a half year later, and I'm working as the Patriot in Global. I'm more experienced. I'm more seasoned in the ring. I'm just better at what I do because I've got more ring time under my belt. And the All Japan called me back and asked me to come over for a tour. And I thought it was just going to be a 1-3 week tour. Well, 2 nights into it, Baba offered me a full-time job.
Wow.
So, you know, that cut short also my time in the GWF.
Yeah, and I mean, it seemed to coincide with Joe Pedicino, you mentioned earlier. He left, and he was the initial guy that I viewed as, you know, one of the guys that was putting a lot into the company. And when he left, obviously, we had a major downturn, and then the company, you know, ultimately folded a couple of years later. It lasted longer without him than it did with him. But like I said, the times that people remember were when you were part of it, and Joe Pedicino left almost the same time that you had left. So I just assumed that you left when Joe left. I did not realize that you left specifically to go to All Japan.
Yeah, I did. I went over for the May-June tour, and again, the years may be off here, but somewhere in that time frame, 91, 92, something like that. And again, I was just happy that I had some redemption and had a chance to go back, because I'm telling you, I stunk it up the first time I went. But when they offered me the opportunity to go back for that 3-week tour, again, like I said, 2 nights into it, Baba pulls me aside and said, look, we want you to work full-time here. We want you to do the rest of the year next year. And I couldn't turn that down.
Absolutely. Well, we'll speed up the questions a little bit for you, because I promised you we wouldn't keep you all night. But the next time we saw you on American TV was in World Championship Wrestling. And I got to tell you, when I first saw you come out in WCW, I was really excited as a former global fan and thinking, wow, this is a good fit for him there, and let's see how it works out. And yes, you had your successes, Stars and Stripes, 2-time tag team champions, and Marcus Bagwell's been multiple times on our show, by the way, and great guy. You know, you guys had a really good run there as a tag team, but ultimately, I feel like you could have done more. You kind of felt like you got a little lost in the shuffle. Did you feel the same way?
Oh yeah, that's why I left. Eric, who was our TV guy, did our TV for the AWA when I worked for Vern, was now running WCW, and he called me, and I went over to Atlanta, and we sat down and met for about 3 hours, and got up, and I had a 3-year contract. And at first it was good. I was pleased with the way things were going. But once they signed Hogan and brought in all the other guys from the WWF, you know, Savage and Beefcake and Hogan, and, you know, it was done. It all then, the focus of the company was about Hulk Hogan and Hulk Hogan's buddies, or Ric Flair and Ric Flair's buddies. And the rest of us just sort of got kicked to the curb. So that's, you know, I could see the handwriting on the wall. I was as miserable as you could be. And I left. I went to Eric. I had a year left on my contract. I said, look, dude, I've got an opportunity to go back to Japan, because Japan had contacted me about coming back. Perfect timing. And I went to Eric. I said, look, I'm going to be working on the other side of the world. Nobody in America will see what I'm doing in All Japan. Their TV doesn't come here. It's only in Japan. Will you let me out of the last year? And he said, no, can't do it. And I knew I was gone. I think we had a pay-per-view in Tupelo, Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I may be wrong about the town, but I no-showed them, and wow. I was done. I just walked on them.
That's a little different than it would be now, I think, with the legalese involved in wrestling today. That might be a little different.
He threatened me with. He immediately started calling my house and my wife at the time, threatening her, wanting to know where I was at. And then he sent a very threatening letter to me in Japan, sent to the hotel we were staying in. And I took it to Bob, and Bob asked me what I wanted to do about it. And I said, I think if we ignore him, he'll go away. And he did. He went away.
Do you think that's partially why they brought in characters like patriotic characters like Cobra, who was Jeff Farmer, and guys like Craig Pittman and all those guys, to be more like, you know, American hero kind of characters shortly after you had left?
It may have been their reasoning for doing that. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Once I left, I really didn't follow them that closely. I just really had a bad taste in my mouth about the company, the experience I had there. I think in my career, probably the only other worse experience I had was when I was really an infant in the business, and I was working in Mid-South, and I hated being there, and this was equally as bad.
Did you have any experiences with Bill Watts? When you
No, I did not.
Okay. Because a lot of guys have their horror stories about Bill Watts. I actually like him, personally, but a lot of people have their, you know, oh, you bullied me and things like that, so I thought I'd ask that there.
Well, that's very interesting, because a few years later, you wound up working for the WWF, and you had that big world title program with Bret Hart. How do you compare the two atmospheres, WCW and WWF?
Well, listen, it was a toxic atmosphere almost. Well, let me rephrase that. It was a very cliquish atmosphere in WCW. When we did TV, I'm telling you, I dressed with what was called the job guys or the enhancement guys. I would always dress with those guys because there was no egos in that room. And I'm not an egotistical guy. I'm not an ego-driven guy. I want to go out and do my best like everybody else. I'm going to bust my butt. I want to be the best I can be. But I'm not all blown up about myself. And at WCW locker room, that's all it was. And you had to be in a clique to be a part of anything, to fit in. And I don't do cliques. I don't do that. But I found it a lot more fun in the WWF locker room. Now, there were issues there as well when I was there. This deal with Bret and Shawn Michaels was brewing pretty heavy. And, of course, I'm working with Bret every night. So, Bret bends my ear every night about how, he doesn't like Shawn and he hates the direction of the company. So there were issues in that locker room as well. But I just found it to be a more entertaining, a more carefree locker room.
Very cool. Now, did you have a chance to read Bret Hart's book at all?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. In the book, he doesn't say anything bad about you. I'll prepare you. He just says that he feels that the company, and probably speaking to what you said he was bending your ear about, had gone to a very cartoonish place, and that because it was in such a cartoonish place, he doesn't feel that you guys could have possibly done what you probably could have done with your athletic abilities with the matches that you guys had. He did say that he has ultimate respect for you, but that the match, that matches didn't live up to what he thought they could have been. Do you think that those matches were as good as they could have been?
Well, that's the first I've heard of that. Every time I've ever talked with Bret since then or been around Bret, he's had nothing but good things to say, and I don't know where the cartoonish issue comes from as well, because that's all that company's ever been, is cartoonish, in my opinion. It's been let's make a deal on steroids for 30 years. So I don't agree with that notion either, but that's his opinion. Listen, Bret, that was a difficult time for Bret, and I get it. He was being really, honestly, they were pushing Shawn to be the face of the company, and Bret's time was running out there. He was very unhappy with that. He was unhappy with a lot of the content of the program. He was very unhappy with Owen and how they were using him. So he was just in a tough spot during that time. So, whatever feelings he has, he's entitled to those, but none of those were ever expressed to me.
Very cool. They did a couple weird angles with you right before you left WWE, where they started addressing you by Del Wilkes and things like that. I guess my ultimate question is, other than injury, was there any other reason that you departed WWE the way that you did, somewhat abruptly?
No, it was 100% due to injury. Listen, I was damaged goods when I got there. I had no grand illusion that I was going to be able to fulfill the terms of the 3-year deal that I signed. I'd blown my knee out. I had smoked my tricep twice. It had literally, the tendon of my tricep had ripped off the bone and rolled up the back of my arm twice. And I just was a physical mess. And I couldn't work out like I needed to. I couldn't train like I needed to. It affected the things I could do in the ring. And so, I went there thinking, hey, I'm going to run this thing as long as I can. But, it was 100% purely my body let me down. I just could not continue.
I jokingly mentioned to you, and I do mean it, that I have an action figure of you on the wall, and I have had on for 18 years now. I guess my question I wanted to ask you about that is, was it kind of cool after all the amount of time that you had spent in the business to get the merchandising market that the WWE offers behind the Patriot and to see yourself in an action figure form and things of that nature?
Yeah, it was. They have always been the king of merchandising. When I was in WCW, they did a little bit, but not a lot. They really weren't into an awful lot of merchandising. All Japan did some. We had our towels and our pictures and, T-shirts and stuff like that. But WWE has always been the king of merchandising. So, yeah, it was great to be able to walk into a Kmart or a toy store and see yourself immortalized in rubber hanging up in the action figure section. And listen, all these years later, you still, to show you the power of the WWE, then WWF machine. I haven't worked there since 1998, early 98 or late 97. And every quarter I still get royalty checks. So that says a lot about the outreach of, and the power of WWF or WWE.
That's pretty cool. Do you miss it? Do you miss it all getting in the ring?
I do. That was the great part of the business. you know, the camaraderie of the guys, you miss that first and foremost. But you do miss getting in the ring. You do miss sitting down with another guy or four of you coming up with a match and going out and be able to pull that thing off and to hear the crowd chant and the clap and stomp their feet when you've really got a great match going, a great finish, just the satisfaction that gives you, yeah, you miss it a lot. And it's, you know, if you've ever done it one time, man, it's in you forever. It really is.
Very cool. So I have we're almost done, I promise you, and I told you I wouldn't keep you all evening. I think it probably has gone a little longer than I promised you, so I do apologize for that.
No, you're fine.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, my next question is a little weird, a little different anyway. Last night I was watching TV, and it was pretty specific commercial to former NFL players. If you have suffered any injuries, you may be entitled to compensation. Now, I know that you're a former NFL player. Your time was brief there. With everything we hear, you know, Chris Nowinski being the guy behind a lot of the concussions and everything that you hear about that, what is your take on the injuries that you sustained in football versus what you sustained in wrestling? And basically, what is your take on concussions and the concussion protocol?
Well, the injuries I had in football and wrestling don't even compare. You know, people talk about the violent nature of football, and it is that, absolutely. But I had a shoulder surgery as a result of football and one arthroscopic knee surgery. I've had 15 surgeries altogether, 2 from football, 13 from wrestling.
Wow.
Wrestling basically destroyed my body. So, you know, and one thing I attribute it to is I worked 2 different times in All Japan where it was a much more stiff, much more harder style. And, you know, it took its toll on your body. And plus with football, you do have an off season. With wrestling, you don't. And you tend to want to work through any injury you get because you're afraid that any time off TV is going to take away any momentum you have. So you want to push yourself to go as long as you can before you really have to stop and address the injury. And the concussion issue is real. It's a real deal. And, you know, I think they've done a lot better with it. And I'm sure there's still improvements that can be made. But it's a real deal from football, college, NFL, and it's a real deal in pro wrestling as well. I mean, you do stupid things like take chair shots to the head. And as hard as you work to make everything look good and to make it look real, there are times out there. Listen, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, they have games where they make big mistakes. And in pro wrestling, as much as we want to make things look smooth and never miss a beat, we mess things up and kick each other in the head, forearm each other in the head when we're not supposed to, drop a guy on his head, DDT a guy on his head accidentally. And so you take a lot of blows to the head, and it's a real deal. And to even further, you know, expound on that, I was approached and initially signed up to be a part of that lawsuit against the WWF.
The concussion?
But I got the, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And the way they approached me about it was not only concussions, that's our major focus, but also, too, the other injuries, the career-ending injuries that a lot of you guys suffered, like myself. And listen, I can't tell you how many concussions I've had. I mean, I've been knocked stupid in the ring dozens of times where for the next 15, 20 seconds you don't know where you're at. But I was very, very briefly a part of it. I got to thinking, yeah, my career did end because of an injury, but I never suffered a single injury in a WWF ring. I was working there when I had to retire because of injuries. And basically, this lawsuit is about one man and one man only. They're going after Vince McMahon. And so I removed myself from that lawsuit. Anybody who wants to be a part of it, God bless you. That's your decision. I want nothing to do with it.
Wow. Very cool to hear that. Final question for me, and Patrick might have a question for you, but my final question for you is, it's a discussion that's kind of become folklore online, and it's this discussion on who owns the rights to the name Patriot. Since you owned it for so many years and you are the guy that everybody identifies with it, I know that Tom Brady played it for a while, and there's a couple other people. I heard that Honky Tonk Man actually owns the rights to it. So what is the real answer? What is the real answer of who owns the Patriot name?
Honky Tonk Man does not own the rights to that. Tom Brady does not own the rights to that. Listen, I found out a few years ago that it was all over the internet that I sold it to him. That's a lie. I haven't talked to Tom Brandy in 25 years. Now, Tom Brandy did not do it for a time. It's what Tom Brandy does today. That's what Tom does. And he's a liar. He's a fraud. He's a thief. He sells pictures of me at events that he works. He tells people he's me. Listen, some of the fans that I talk to him every day have gotten smartened up to Tom. And so when they go to an event that he's at, they'll ask him outright. I talk with these people daily, weekly. I see them at live events, autograph signings and things like that. They'll even ask him, hey, are you Dale Wilkes? Yep, I'm Dale Wilkes. He signs my pictures. The guy's just pathetic. He really is.
In the mask, he tells them that that's who he is. In the mask, he says,
yes, he does.
Wow.
I can't tell you how many people have told me that. I had a lady send me a picture last year of her son sitting in the Patriots' lap. And she said, I just want to thank you for making my boy happy. He has battled, I forget what disease, his entire life. He has been a sick child his entire life. And we introduced him to you through YouTube, watching your matches. And we saw that you were going to be in Newark, New Jersey. And we took him, and he got to meet you. And here's the picture. Would you sign it and send it back? And I contacted the lady. I said, ma'am, you don't have to tell your kid this because I don't want him disappointed. That's not me. That's Tom Brandy.
Oh,
You're
wow.
kidding me. We asked him if he was Dale Wilkes, and he said, yeah. So, yeah, the guy's got no morals about him. And he was a mid-card guy at best.
Yeah, he was salvatore sincere in the WWE.
He couldn't make that work. He couldn't make Johnny Gunn work. And I'm the best thing that's ever happened to him.
I would argue you'd be probably right. I tell you the truth, and I'll tell you the truth, and it's on there somewhere. It's back in the day, going back probably almost a year, but he was talking about the Patriot character on the Wrestling Epicenter Facebook page as Tom Brandy, as his own Facebook account. And I had said, do you own the rights to that? He said, no, Honky Tonk Man does. That's where that came from. So, man, I got some bad information from a bad guy, it sounded like to me.
Let me tell you what Honky Tonk did. He claims that he tried to get a hold of me. He took some guys several years back and worked some overseas shows. And he wanted a patriotic character on the show. And he claims he didn't know how to get a hold of me, that he tried and he couldn't get me. So he took somebody over there, and it may have been Brandy, dressed them up as the Patriot, and that's the extent of it. That's what he did. And he doesn't own the rights to that character. Brandy doesn't. I mean, they've just told this big lie, but that's not unusual for Honky Tonk either, because he tried to do the same thing with Roddy Piper. He tried to steal Roddy's identity and gimmick.
I'm sure that went over well.
Rowdy?
Yeah, he did. He certainly did. I've heard Roddy talk about it several times.
Yeah, Roddy never was on our show. It was one of the Stone's true regrets that I have that I never had Roddy Piper on the show. But I did talk to him a couple of times leading into what was to be an interview. And wouldn't you know, as soon as I started talking to him, his daughter fell and broke her arm literally as we were getting started. And it's like,
really?
Could you believe the bad luck? I mean, and of course now it's never going to happen, but it was a true regret that I never had Roddy Piper on. But he had mentioned at one point that he wanted to kill Honky Tonk Man for all the junk that he put him through. So I believe it. Yeah, they're and listen, guys, I try not to speak bad of anybody, but I have no choice when it comes to both of them. There's nothing good you can say about them. So I guess the answer to that question would then be that you still own the rights to the Patriot character.
Correct.
Awesome. And I guess my final question, unless Patrick has it for you, it has another one for you, is given the fact that you did not take part in the class action lawsuit and all that, would you consider, if they asked you to, a WWE Hall of Fame position?
Oh, absolutely. It would be an honor. It would be an honor. They're the biggest thing in the wrestling industry, and even though it was very briefly, I got to work there and be a part of the company. And I think Vince is the greatest promoter that's ever lived. I'm not crazy about the current product they got, but yes, to answer your question, absolutely, it would be an honor.
Absolutely. Patrick, do you have anything you'd like to wrap up with?
No, I have no further questions. I was just happy to sit back and let you kind of talk and explain. It was very good and very informative. Thank you so much.
I really do. I echo those remarks. I thank you so much for spending this time with us. And again, for those who want to hear the entire story, and I'm sure a lot of what we covered, but also a lot more considering the amount of time that is on these DVDs, can be found at your website. You can get an autographed copy. As I jokingly said, I have an autographed picture of Stars and Stripes with yourself and Marcus Bagwell on the wall for years and years and years. Might be time I update that with this copy of this DVD, so I will definitely be purchasing it. And once again, where can people pick up the documentary?
DellThePatriotWilkes.com. You can get it there, $20 plus mailing or shipping, and it will be autographed. And not only that, you can get a lot of other things there. We've got masks on the website. We've got a ton of pictures, cards from my playing days at South Carolina.
Awesome.
We've got the DVDs, and you can get it all at DellThePatriotWilkes.com.
Enjoying what you're hearing? Be sure and check out WrestlingEpicenter.com on social media at Facebook.com/WrestlingEpicenter, on Twitter at James Epicenter, and of course, WrestlingEpicenter.com for 24-hour news updates, our interview archives, and all the other information you've come to expect from the Wrestling Epicenter.
This is Bret the Hitman Hart, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Hey, this is Buck Bagwell, and guess what? You're listening to the Interactive Interview.
We're back here on Interactive Wrestling Radio. We just finished up with the Patriot, Del Wilkes.
The real Patriot.
The real Patriot, yeah.
Actually, Tom Brady wanted to make some money. He'd call himself the Dark Patriot and try and keep the angle going on the Indies or something.
Doug Gilbert sues. That's what Del's got to do. He's got to sue, man. I would sue.
Yeah, what did I tell you up there? Salvatore's sincere, not very sincere.
That's funny. I remember we got in trouble for one thing. I only have a few Tom Brandy stories, and I don't have any real direct contact with him. We got in trouble for something that he offhandedly said about Malaya Hosaka on a different podcast. And I hate calling them podcasts, by the way. I don't consider this a podcast, but whatever. That's what we're known as, so that's what we'll go by. Somebody said something, off color about Malaya Hosaka, and I know Malaya Hosaka okay. We interviewed her with Chris Ferguson's show, and we talked a few times online. I don't really have a whole lot to say to her, but I think she's a good athlete. She was awesome in the early '90s and through WCW. So great talent. But she contacted me really upset that these things were said about her, and I remember saying, "Oh, I feel terrible that they were said, but they weren't on my show, and I didn't say them. So there's really not a lot I could do about that." So I did seek it out, and truthfully, I found out who did do the interview and put her in contact with those people. But that was the one side of the story, and the other one was I bought a videotape from Sal Sincere. Back in 1996 or 7, I bought a copy of a videotape. Won't get into that on here too much, but it fits. I'll just say that. I have no problem with him, Tom Brandy, at all. Don't get me wrong, but it fits. It all fits together.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Anyway, so Del Wilkes, great interview, great DVD out now, and the guys who did this DVD also put together a great Rock and Roll Express documentary, a great documentary on the Jim Crockett years, and they skirt so well the rights to use the content so well, so to where you almost don't realize that they don't have the right to use the content because they do it in such a nice, well tight way that it almost doesn't feel like you're not seeing any real content. Obviously they can't put the Bret Hart versus the Patriot match on there, but they could show a picture of Bret Hart wrestling the Patriot, and they do it such a good job that definitely worth picking up and get an autographed copy from Del Wilkes, the real Patriot, and be able to say that, okay, I hung this on my wall and I know it was signed by the real guy. It's a pretty cool thing for $20.
And it's also good to see documentaries being made about wrestling that aren't produced by the WWE, because I'm not trying to be an anti-WWE guy, but part of the problem with them owning everything and being the largest wrestling company in the world is that you kind of see everything slanted from their point of view. So it's nice to see like an outsider's perspective on kind of documenting somebody's career, and I think that's what's really interesting to me.
It is, and it's their own perspective on it instead of the way that Vince wants you to view it. Similar to ECW, the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD, which,
and that wasn't even the worst one, but yeah.
Oh, there's been some bad ones. Yeah, there's been the Road Warriors comes to mind when they, Demolition was just a ripoff. That's that you're gonna deal with that.
And it's made Demolition, so why you gotta be? Come on, man, why you gotta hate?
Yeah. What's your problem, dog? Have you ever seen Teen Titans Go?
I saw the original Teen Titans show, and I really liked it. I remember watching it in college. I've seen a couple episodes of Teen Titans Go. It's funny. It's random as hell, but I think it's funny. The fans hate it, but, that's because they're humorless jackasses.
Oh, that's basically true. If you like the original one, then you probably like things a lot more serious and deeper and things like that. And this show is very much just goofball. Completely SpongeBobified goofball material. But if you're ever interested in finding one that, for our age group, would probably have you in stitches, look up Video Game Reference is the name of the episode.
Yeah, I saw one episode of it, and I thought it was really funny. But it's kind of the difference between, like, a lot of the Batman shows have come out and the Brave and the Bold. Everybody hated Brave and the Bold. I thought it was really funny and creative, but, because it was deliberately silly, a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah, you got to remember the mindset of some people, especially when you get to franchises and things that have had a real following previously. If you present it in a way that's almost intended entirely for comedy and not much for anything else, they're either not going to be in on the joke, or they're going to find that you're mocking it in some way. Mm-hmm. So, this one stands on its own. My oldest son watched Teen Titans regular. He does not like the remake, but Alex, every time it's on, which seems to be almost as much as SpongeBob SquarePants is on, we're watching Teen Titans Go, and very funny. So for anybody 34, let's put the age group at like 28 to 42. Google Video Game Reference Teen Titans Go. It's very funny. Very, very funny.
Hey, will do.
Very funny. They reference Zelda and Pac-Man and all this other stuff. Very funny stuff. The original Zelda game, that is. Anyway, back to wrestling. So we've had a couple cool things happen in wrestling, and one of those things was the heel turn of the club, which we once knew as the Bullet Club, as AJ Styles.
Talk about skirting around the name.
Yeah, that's clever.
So the material that you can't do. It's like, man, could you imagine if Undertaker went to WCW and they just called him Taker?
Yeah.
Or better yet, when WWE got the NWO in 2002 and they put them in and they were just the Order.
Yeah, the Order. Here comes the Order.
Which changing the name is like the only thing they didn't do. But, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But anyway, yeah, AJ Styles and John Cena, it should be an exciting match because, you have that guy that I've been watching for years and years, and AJ was always kind of my go-to. It's like, we lived through the Cena era where he was just rammed down our throats, and that turned a lot of people off to WWE, and that's how I eventually found TNA and ROH and other companies, and I found this guy, AJ Styles, who's kind of like my not anti-WWE, but he was kind of like one of my refuges away from the WWE if I ever got sick of what they were doing. And now he's in the WWE working with the top guy that I tried to avoid for all those years. So it should be an exciting match on paper. The problem is we all know how this is going to go down, right?
Yeah, Cena's going to win.
Yeah, it's been 11 years of this. We know the drill.
And then if you really think of it on paper, AJ came to WWE. The crowd went crazy. They had him lose to Chris Jericho in a match he had no right to lose.
Which everybody says, like, there was no reason for Jericho to win that match at WrestleMania.
Right. Then they proceed to have him have main event matches with the world champion where he continuously loses, both on the house show circuit as well as on television, pay-per-view, whatever you want to call them these days. And then, now he's going to be working with the top guy, and he's undoubtedly going to lose again. So,
and Cena just came back. Do you think he's going to lose his first major match back?
Of course not.
I mean, it would be great. And even if AJ wins the first match, Cena's going to win all the rematches, because that's how it works.
Yeah, Rusev.
Again, I know the drill.
Yeah, look at the Rusev feud, for example.
Rusev, it happened. Oh, my God, that was so obvious. I called it before it even happened. I was like, all right, they're building up Rusev to feed him to Cena. And then I looked at it like, oh, he's not going to wrestle him at WrestleMania. He's going to wrestle him in February. It's like Rusev's going to win the first match. Cena's going to win the Mania match and any other rematches. And it played out exactly how I predicted it would. And it's not that I'm a genius. It's just that I've seen what they do with John Cena to keep him on top. And even like AJ Styles turning heel, they're doing that because even though most of the crowd is going to cheer for AJ, regardless of what you do, they're doing it to, well, we can't turn Cena heel. And so that's kind of one of their constants. It's the same thing with Roman Reigns. Rollins comes back, a lot of fanfare. Rollins has to be the heel because we just cannot turn Roman Reigns heel. And so when they have those special little pet projects, they just have to keep them babyface, even though nobody wants them to be a face.
It's almost reached a point where it's combative, to where they're combating the will of the obvious wrestling fan. And, you know, a lot of people said, oh, back in the day, well, the Internet is only this % of wrestling fans. Well, it's reached a different, because of, you know, cell phones and tablets and everything else that goes involved with being obsessed with the Internet and engulfing yourself in your favorite things because of the availability of all these things. That's certainly not the case anymore, and that's why you see the differences in the crowd reaction, to where everybody thinks they're a smart fan now. And some of them are. Some of them think that they are. And the end result is, though, they follow the trend of what is being said and done online. So even though Cena is on paper the good guy, yes, he's going to get cheered. He's going to get booed. Yet,
and you know, the weird thing is, and going even further back, there is a precedence for, okay, if this babyface isn't working, let's turn him heel, and then one of two things will happen. You either get mega heat and you have a great villain. That would be like a Hollywood Hogan, how well that worked. I'm trying to think of some other example. It kind of worked for Edge when they made him the rated R superstar.
Or one of my favorites. That's the last. I almost said 10 years, but it's probably even a little more than that now. But in the last, you know, a little over a decade, that's probably my favorite transition to the rated R superstar.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing that could happen is that you turn them heel, and then eventually they gain acceptance as babyfaces. I basically just summarized The Rock's career. Do you think Rock would be the star he is today in Hollywood if they didn't turn him heel when everybody was chanting "Die Rocky, die"?
No, they eventually had to follow. And to his credit, he knew what to do with it when they turned him, and that's.
Oh yeah.
You know, the rest.
I'm not taking anything away from The Rock. It's just that they made the right call. If they had if they were booking back then the way they do now, they would have just run with Rocky Maivia and fuck you if you don't like it.
Wow.
And
they might have.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they were doing, and then WCW would have won the war, and and you know, we'd have a WCW network right now.
It would have taken a lot of things to change.
Right. I'm just, you get what I'm saying. It's just kind of, I don't know why they're so stubborn about these things. With even the New Day, you look at the New Day right now; they're popular as hell right now, and they started off as a babyface act that nobody liked. So they're, all right, let's turn him heel and make him sarcastic. And then in doing so, they gained acceptance as babyfaces. So, yeah, New Day's great now.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the New Day is a little perplexing to me. I'll be honest with you. Speaking of Teen Titans.
They're totally a nerd thing. They're totally like a goofy nerd thing. That's entirely what it is.
Yeah.
I love them. I think they're great, but
yeah, they're fine. And speaking of things we might not agree on, they're fine. I enjoy it, I guess, but I don't think I'm entirely in on the joke. It's what it is. Sometimes I watch, I'm like, wait, what? Speaking of Teen Titans Go, but anyway, or the reaction of the original Teen Titans fans to Teen Titans Go. That's exactly what it is when I watch the New Day. Anyway, speaking of things we might not agree with, the latest thing online that kind of sprang up that everybody's talking about. No, it's not the gorilla. I'm not going to talk about the. I'm not going to talk about.
Oh man, we got to stay current.
All right, let's talk about the gorilla. Okay, if they kill, let's talk about that real quick. If they don't shoot the gorilla and the gorilla kills the boy, they put the gorilla down anyway. So, let's say the only possible other thing that could have happened is they don't shoot the gorilla and everything goes great. However, you had a lot of people acting and behaving like people in Cincinnati do, and carrying on like morons, agitating said gorilla, and you can see it in the video. And as the gorilla's getting more agitated, the kid's getting flopped around a little more than he was prior. One really strong hit, and that kid's dead from that gorilla. So there's only one chance, even though the only innocent thing in this entire story, because the kid shouldn't have been sneaking away from his parents. His parents should have been watching the kid, and the zoo's at fault because how the hell does a 4-year-old get into the enclosure in the first place? All these things are right, and they make everybody involved guilty, except the gorilla who was just hanging out in his pen. The only one who's innocent is the one who gets killed in this case. But
it's sad. I mean, the whole thing could have been avoided if, some parents were watching their damn kid. But yeah, you're right. Animals are very unpredictable, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, look, all I see is like you've got like a fucking huge gorilla next to a 4-year-old kid, and you don't know what that gorilla's going to do. So they acted in the interest of saving the kid, and it's unfortunate that it went down the way it did, but it was sad.
It's a shame. It's a shame, and I feel bad that the gorilla died, but I also say that it was the only call that really could have been made to save the kid's life. Because ultimately, and this is where people will butt heads again, in my opinion, the life of a small boy is more important than the life of a gorilla. And that is where that's where the line is drawn. What is the meaning of life and all that? Well, human above all else. That's my view. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
Anyway, what I was actually going to mention was the Will Ospreay versus Ricochet match from the Super Junior, the best of the Super Juniors in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, this match has had Vader, former guest on our show, Vader was as well, Simon Dean, Mike Bucci, and a lot of other guys that, I wouldn't even have imagined would watch, Jimmy Corderas as well, all Facebook friends, by the way, posting about it, talking their opinions of this match, and some are positive, and some are negative, and some are in between. And I've watched the match, and I'm kind of like, well, let me ask you this. What is your opinion of the match?
Well, again, you mentioned the debate and how polarizing it's been. Vader was obviously, he's kind of become the main representative for the opposing side. It's like, the match doesn't make any sense. It's completely lacking in psychology, and it's just a spot fest and blah, 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 all that other stuff. And then you have the other side of the equation, which is people saying, like, no, it's exciting, it's different, and, and they're amazing athletes and all of that. Again, I'm more in the middle. I'm not going to say that this is like a match of the year candidate for me or anything like that. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorite matches of all time, but, Ricochet and Will Ospreay are amazing athletes. They are incredible guys. Ricochet, I'm very high on. Obviously, I'm a Lucha Underground fan, and he plays Prince Puma, and he's great on that show. And he can have great main event matches. I've seen him do it. This style of match is not something I would like to see as a main event, because to me it's just kind of they just do a bunch of really cool, over-the-top, impressive moves, and it looks amazing. And the stuff they did to each other in that match looked incredible. I I could certainly never do any of that stuff. Was it the greatest told story, and was it, did it have a ton of in-ring psychology? Not really. I mean, to be honest, I've seen worse offenders of it. I'll take this match over any Young Bucks match. I know I sound like I hate on them, but that's because I kind of do. But I enjoyed this match more than a lot of other those flip-floppy spot fests, but it's not, I didn't think it was the be-all, end-all greatest thing ever either. So I can kind of see both sides of the argument.
I can see both sides of the argument as well. What I get upset with is if you don't agree with this was the greatest thing ever, and this is where wrestling's going, and if you don't see it, you're old and stupid. It's like, hold on. I'm not that old. I'm not Vader's age. And I see his side of the argument. And I do subscribe to some extent that something Larry Zbyszko said in a promo. And he said, there is no new school. There is no old school. There's only right and wrong. And I always have kept that somewhere near me because I think there's a lot of truth in that statement. That said, I am a card-carrying member of the actually did watch ECW crowd. And when I say actually did watch ECW, I don't mean you watch it on the network and see the stripped-down version of the show that they are allowed to show. I don't mean that I watched a documentary on them 10 years after they closed and said that I was a fan of it when it ran. I was there 2 a.m. in the morning on whatever channel it was, Sports Channel or wherever, or public access, watching this stuff. And they were doing a lot of the stuff that the people had the same reaction to, saying, this is really radical and it doesn't have psychology. It's not the way wrestling should be and things of that nature. And you know what? They're right, too. The bottom line is it probably won't change wrestling. In fact, I'm going to go on a limb and say it will not change wrestling. It was an interesting match that I enjoyed watching, but everything that the old-timers or those who are perceived to be the old-timers said is accurate as well.
Actually, that's a pretty good assessment of it. As far as, like, changing wrestling goes, it's not that different from what I see on the indies. It's probably a better version of that, but it's kind of cut from the same cloth. But, yeah, they did a bunch of amazing moves and counters to each other. And so, yeah, I've seen that before. Not always as well as this, but...
Yeah, and I even said that. I said, it's nothing that I really haven't seen before. Just it was an interesting presentation of a match with two athletes that are probably a cut above everybody else.
Yeah, and Will Ospreay, I've seen him a handful of times. He's, again, amazing athlete.
Oh, his name comes up a lot, and people are really high on him. And with his athletic ability, there's no doubting why. I don't agree with spot fests, and you know I was not a big fan of Ring of Honor 10+ years ago when every match of theirs was an hour long and there was no real damn meaning to anything that they did. I like ROH a lot more now that there's still an element of that, but it's certainly been dialed down a lot from what it once was. With the every single match is an hour long and there's 35 false finishes in each one of them, and nothing means a damn thing anymore. There's not as much of that anymore in ROH, so I do appreciate.
It's one of those things, and that's where the bookers need to come in, and the agents that put matches together need to really have a handle on things. Like, look, not everybody can go out there and have a main event. There's things called pacing and timing, and a lot of that needs to be taken into consideration. That Ricochet Ospreay match, it was fun for this, and it works great for a tournament like this where you're trying to sell it on. Yeah, I mean the Super Junior or the light heavyweight style in Japan is predicated on that high energy type of action. So for a tournament like this, it works very well. I would not like to see that every single show, every single night, and 5 different matches that look like that. That would get old really quick.
Right, and I agree with that. I think there's a very real chance, because of the hubbub about the match, that you're going to see Ricochet or Will Ospreay signed to an NXT deal. I realize fully that Ricochet is signed to Lucha Underground for at least season 3. But don't be surprised if, because of the hubbub about it, that they try to get these two on NXT or in WWE to do that exact same match and pretend it's new. That's kind of what. Hey,
no one ever accused Vince of not knowing when other people had good ideas.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to the Patriot today, right? So let's look at the time the Patriot was around. How many fake versions of the NWO did Vince have at the time? You had Los Boricuas and the Disciples of the Apocalypse. And
is that what he was going for? Were those supposed to be NWO knockoffs?
I'm more talking about like heel factions. Or
Dude,
factions,
yeah, I mean, oh my God, they had so many stables back. The Truth Commission, that was another one.
That was a weird one. That was a really weird one because you had a Canadian playing a South African, and it was like, and he had the name of a rock band, and it's like, wait, what? Because he even spelled it Jackyl, which is how the rock band spells it. And it's like, wait, isn't that copyrighted? You know, I don't know. For those who don't know what I mean, there's a band from actually South Carolina. Maybe they know Del Wilkes pretty well, called Jackal, and they're most famous for having a chainsaw wielding frontman. Basically, they sound like AC/DC, but their frontman's father was a lumberjack, and he thinks that a guitar and a chainsaw sound very similar to each other. So in some songs where you would usually hear a guitar solo, you will hear a chainsaw solo.
Okay.
Very cool band. I'll tell you what.
Leatherface's favorite band.
It might be. There you go. It was pretty cool though. About 13 years ago, when the first Pirates of the Caribbean came out, they were bumped off.
How long ago was that?
Yeah, maybe 13 years. It was, to put it in perspective, I'm talking about a Tom Green interview. So
oh, God.
Tom Green bumped Jackal off the show. They had just put out a really good record called Relentless. I really like the album. In fact, I said they sound like AC/DC. One of the songs was written by Brian Johnson, who I guess you could say formerly was of AC/DC. Was at the time for sure. Anyway, long story short, they went on to getting bumped. He brought his chainsaw out and cut Tom Green's desk in half with his chainsaw. So apparently they didn't appreciate being bumped from the little girl with the zit from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Okay.
Now they also, last thing about that, because it's really off topic, is they had a song that the Women's Liberation group did not like called She Loves My Cock, was the name of the song. So that offended Women's Liberation group, so Kmart pulled their CDs off the shelves. So they proceeded to rent a U-Haul truck, park it in front of the revolving doors at the front of the Kmart in their town, and perform that song over and over again until they got arrested. So we're talking about fairly wild guys. Not anymore. That's 25 years ago. They're much calmer now, but at the time they were.
Okay, can I get on a soapbox for a minute?
Sure.
Since we're going off on tangents here, it's like, look, guys, I'm not trying to get political here. I'm just saying I like the First Amendment. It's kind of awesome. If there's something available in the free market that you do not like, just don't buy that damn thing. You don't take it away from everybody else. That really annoys me.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just, I don't like it when Christians do it. I don't like it when anybody else does it. I don't like it when feminists do it. Just get off your goddamn high horse and just let me buy the things I might want to buy.
Right. What is the song? The lyric from Different Strokes? What might be right for you may not be right for some.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you. Alan Thicke, by the way, wrote that song. There's a little brain teaser for you. Alan Thicke wrote the theme song for Different Strokes. Go figure that. So the dad from Growing Pains. The dad from Growing Pains wrote the theme song to Different Strokes. There's your factoid of the day, folks. Anyway, we've gone way off topic.
Yeah, we did.
We did cover all the things we said we wanted to, and I'll finish with this though. We had the Patriot on. He talked a little bit about the political climate now, and you mentioned it too with people. Bottom line is people need to allow people to feel the way that they want to feel without putting a label on it. And that's not an indictment of any group in particular. I'm not going to tell you where I stand, though I think most people already know. But
follow James on Facebook.
Yeah, follow me on Facebook if you want to read and think, oh my God, where did this caveman come from? But if you, the bottom line is we do have the freedom of speech. You can't censor it or label it something just because you disagree with it. People have the right to express their opinions, and if you don't like it, well, then either don't listen to what they have to say or tell them where they're wrong. But don't just take away their right to share said opinion. So that happened to me. I got thrown off Facebook because I implied that Bruce Jenner was not actually a woman because of his surgery, and they took great offense to that. So that's my opinion. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later, everybody. We have, in a couple days, we have coming up a TNA World Heavyweight Champion, the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Drew Galloway will be on our show. Hope everybody enjoys that one. And again, check out the Patriots website. We'll have a link to it right on the page that you found this interview on. That will take you to that website where you can purchase his new DVD documentary signed by the man himself. So hope everybody will do that. Check it out. I think it probably will be the closest thing you get to a regular autobiography on the guy. And personally, I don't like to read anyway, so if I can just watch it on my screen instead of having to read it, I'll do that.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in, and I'll see you in a couple days here on Interactive Wrestling Radio.